Welcome to Stories from New Eden, the podcast where history, myth, and forgotten truths converge among the stars. I'm your host, Zal Arbosa, and here we dive deep into the lost archives, blacksite reports, and whispered legends of the EVE online universe. From the rise of ancient civilizations to the silent horror of wormhole space, each episode uncovers the hidden narratives that shape New Eden, the truths behind the empires, the lies buried in the ruins, and the echoes left behind by those who vanished. Whether you're a hardened capsuleer or a curious newcomer, this is your gateway to the lore that breathes life into the void. This is Stories from New Eden. Let's begin. The Talocan, architects of the veil. The stars outside the canopy blinked like distant dying embers, too far away to help, too old to care. Jareth's ship drifted through the anomaly on minimal thrust, a lone capsuleer wrapped in the cathedral silence of Anoikis. He'd been chasing nothing for days. Static wormholes, null signatures, thermal echoes of things long gone. Until now. The HUD pinged once, then again. Gravity spiked, dipped, corrected, then dipped again. What the hell? Jareth rotated the ship manually, not because he had to. His neural link handled orientation more efficiently, but because instinct told him to see this with his own eyes. He slowed the spin, engaged dorsal thrusters. The ship came about. And there it was. At first, it didn't register. His brain reached for logic. A small moon, a fragmented asteroid chain, the shattered hull of some forgotten citadel. But it wasn't any of those. The thing was structured, not built in the way Amarian stations were, grand, gilded, symmetrical. Not Galente in its flamboyant curvature. Not even Jovian in its subtle alien elegance. This was something else. Massive pylons pierced a lattice of empty corridors like the skeletal ribs of a creature long extinct. Triangular arms extended outward and bent backward upon themselves, folding space inward. Geometry as philosophy. Segmented towers rotated slowly along axes that defied any stable center. Portions of the structure floated slightly out of phase, shimmering with a ripple that danced between real space and something else. The construct didn't anchor to gravity or to logic. It hung, suspended in the void, impossible and undying. Jareth didn't breathe for a moment. His capsule sustained him just fine, but he held his breath anyway. "Talocan," he whispered. The word barely audible to even himself. He'd seen ruins before, drone hives, sleeper enclaves, ghost sites. But this wasn't debris. This wasn't abandonment. This was intention, design without compromise. One of the corridors opened before him, a vault-like maw shaped like an inverted spiral. The scanner pulsed into it and returned no echo. Nothing. A void. Not a lack of data, but something deeper. A silence that resisted measurement. He hovered there, staring, feeling smaller than he ever had, even inside the thin-skinned shell of his frigate. "Who were you?" he asked. No answer came, but something in the quiet made him feel as though someone had heard him. Somewhere, beyond time, behind veil and void, someone had listened. The first time you see a Talocan structure, something inside you shifts. Not just the awe of scale or the alien geometry. It's the sense that what you're looking at shouldn't be there. Not in this time, not in this space. It feels wrong, it feels impossible, and it feels alive. Long before the great empires of New Eden carved out the stars, there was another people. A people who understood space not as distance, but as fabric, pliable, foldable. who treated time as a variable and gravity as an art form. Their ruins are scattered across Anoikis like echoes in a vast cathedral. Their technology warps the very rules we thought unbreakable. And yet, they are gone. The Talocan. We don't know where they came from. Not exactly. Some believe they were among the earliest survivors of the Eve Gate collapse. Those who didn't try to rebuild or retreat, but transcended instead. Others claim they predate even the collapse, that they were always out there, watching. What we do know comes not from their words, but from what they left behind. Monuments that break light, structures half phased out of real space, ancient reactors still pulsing without decay, and corridors carved with a logic that no modern mind can follow. And somewhere in the weave of their designs, a purpose, a direction, as if all of this wasn't ruin, but roadmap. In this episode, we delve into the myth, mystery, and machinery of the Talocan. We'll trace their technological fingerprints through ancient blacksite data, follow the theories of rogue scholars who risked everything to chase the pattern, and ask the question no empire dares to speak aloud. What if the Talocan didn't disappear? Part 1. First light on the veil. They were found by accident. Most ancient things are. In the early days of wormhole exploration, after the first capsuleers breached Anoikis and returned alive, an expedition flagged an anomaly in the B274 conduit chain. At first, it was thought to be sleeper architecture, but the layout was wrong. The geometry, wronger. What they found was a partial structure, a broken orbital platform suspended half in phase with local space, drifting slowly against the current of gravity wells like a ship lost between realities. It had no markings, no decay, no defense systems, just presence. Archive, blacksite log E, 92-1A. Access level, Concord redacted. Recovered fragment, Capsuleer recon audio, call sign, moth hand. I thought it was a station, then it kept unfolding. I'd rotate around, try to scan the other side, and it would shift, like the structure was mirroring me, reacting. I didn't feel watched. I felt measured, like it was taking something from me just by being there. The find was unlike anything catalogued in New Eden. Ancient ruins were nothing new. Amar burial vaults, Jovian artifact caches, even sleeper enclaves had long since entered the exploration economy. But this was alien in a way nothing else was. It wasn't simply a ruin, it was a statement. In time, other sites were found, all of them dormant, all of them impossible, constructed with materials that defied industrial reverse engineering, components with no seams, no energy signatures, yet still clearly active. One site discovered in System J, 115408, possessed a crystalline core emitting a resonant pulse detectable only on high-energy gravimetric scans. No one knew what it meant. Attempts to recover Talocan technology failed. Extraction teams lost drones, probes, even entire vessels without any observable weapon systems. The structures didn't defend themselves. They simply rejected intrusion. Excerpt, Abandoned Navy Science Report. T Sigma 12. Author, Commander Erit Vok, Federation Navy, Xenoscience Division. We believe the structures operate not within space, but adjacent to it. Talocan engineering is spatially recursive. Rooms within rooms, gravity wells that cancel each other out, an entire corridor that loops back to its entry point from the outside. These are not constructs, they're concepts made manifest. Even naming them Talocan was a guess. drawn from an ancient Jovian linguistic root found embedded in a data shard near one of the ruins. The shard referenced the Talocan veil and described it as a threshold beyond time and between breath. Most dismissed it as metaphor, but others took it literally. The veil, they proposed, was not a physical curtain, but a dimensional interface. The Talocan hadn't just built structures in space, they had bent space to accommodate their structures. Unreleased comms fragment, Sister Astrid. You don't understand. These weren't homes, these were gateways. Every Talocan structure we've mapped is oriented to local magnetic nodes, stellar drift, and wormhole shear patterns. They were moving through reality like a ship through water, and the ruins are just the wake they left behind. This theory gave rise to one of the central myths surrounding the Talocan, that they weren't gone, that they had simply stepped sideways, out of sync with us, into something else. Some capsuleers believe you can still feel them, deep in the uncharted systems of Anoikis. Flickers of phantom pings, shifts in sensor echoes, rooms that change configuration when unobserved. Some report dreams after returning from Talocan ruins, vivid circular dreams, repeating corridors, faces with no eyes. The Talocan may not have vanished, they may simply exist in a state where we cannot follow. Blacksite entry, classified Concord transcript fragment, timestamp YC 118.220. We advise immediate prohibition on continued archaeological incursions into high-density Talocan fields. Capsuleer class Sigma Echo exposed to 72 minutes of unknown field distortion. Neurological scan revealed residual imprinting. Language patterns not native to any recorded linguistic structure. Subject later reported intense desire to fold homeward. Recommend full quarantine. And so the question remains, not who the Talocan were, but where they are now, and what, if anything, they are waiting for. Part 2. Origins and Theories. Where did the Talocan come from? The answer, if there is one, remains buried in a fog of radiation, redacted files, and fragmentary data shards scattered across collapsed stars and forgotten systems. We have no definitive language, no preserved culture, no living witnesses, only architecture that refuses to decay, and artifacts that operate on laws we haven't named yet. Yet speculation persists, because the Talocan don't feel like an anomaly, they feel intentional. Deep Archive, fragment. And 92, Be the First Reachers. Recovered near HDJ-G0. Authenticated. Language traced to early Martian diaspora dialects. They were the ones who never returned. They crossed into the thread between the stars and chose not to come back. They found the veil and pulled it over themselves. Not in fear, but in revelation. One theory traces the Talocan back to the precursor diaspora, a wave of colonial splinters launched in the chaos following the Eve Gate collapse, when the wormhole destabilized and Earth severed contact with its frontier. Thousands of generational expeditions were left adrift. Some colonies fought to maintain order, others regressed into war or mysticism, but a handful looked upward and inward. Among these was a sect known in obscure references as the Anoikis synthesists, a loose confederation of explorers, scientists, and metaphysical engineers who believed that planets themselves were chains, that humanity's destiny was not in colonization, but in abstraction. They sought to transform humanity into something that could inhabit the unstable architectures of wormhole space, not biologically, not digitally, spatially. Blacksite note, excavation, report Sigma C. Author, Dr. Taryn Hoth, independent xenoscientist. The Talocan may not have been a civilization in the traditional sense. They could have been a transition state, a group of humans or post-humans who achieved full dimensional migration. Their cities aren't ruins. They're abandoned shells, cast off like the husks of butterflies. But not everyone agrees. Others claim the Talocan were never human at all, that they were a parallel intelligence, possibly uplifted, possibly machine-born, that arose within or adjacent to the Earth Federation during its final expansion wave. One theory links the Talocan to a defunct black project known only as the Watchtower Protocol, an initiative intended to detect interdimensional threats long before first contact. According to scattered data logs recovered from a derelict Jovian archive, the Watchtower researchers began to pick up recurring gravimetric distortions, patterns not linked to any known physics model, patterns that mirrored the spatial layout of Talocan ruins. And then silence. Excerpt: unreleased comms, Blacksite M Citadel. Audio decrypted by signal archaeologist Irina Vass. The distortions are matching predicted Talocan transit nodes. We're not looking at movement, we're looking at return. They left markers, anchor points, and they're realigning. If true, this could explain a deeply unsettling implication, that Talocan structures are not abandoned relics, but dormant beacons, waiting for something or someone. Still others propose a more grounded theory, that the Talocan was simply one of many post-Earth breakaway civilizations that flourished in isolation, using lost Earth tech, possibly even Jovian relics, to leapfrog into advancement. But the designs are too elegant, too refined, no signs of incremental development. Every artifact we've found suggests a culture that leapt straight to final form. No prototypes, no scaffolding, just perfection from the start. Society of Conscious Thought, unsanctioned position paper. We must entertain the possibility that the Talocan were not simply ahead. They were correct. Their science works because it obeys a deeper order than ours. They didn't discover wormholes, they built around them. Even their name, Talocan, is up for debate. Some linguistic theorists link it to pre-Federation mythos, a corruption of Tlalocan, a Mesoamerican vision of paradise. Others see it as a Jovian codename, a warning, or a prayer. Then there are the whispers, from drifters, from explorers gone too deep into Anoikis, of dreams repeating, of corridors that move, of music without sound. We may never know what the Talocan truly were, but one thing is certain: they didn't simply vanish. They stepped out of frame, and the frame is still here, cracked but intact. Blacksite Addendum, Talocan chiral intersection, internal Concord memo, Y, C119. Temporal overlap detected between known Talocan anomalies and recorded chiral union mass loss events suggests shared principles of non-local consciousness transfer. Potential evidence of ideological convergence between Talocan dimensional migration and chiral hive mind structuring. Investigate further. Perhaps the Talocan were not alone in their pursuit of ascension. Perhaps they were merely the first to succeed. Whether born of Earth, uplifted by Jovians, or spawned in the breach of collapse itself, one truth remains. Every time we scan one of their ruins, every time we stand before those yawning corridors, we are not just looking at the past. We are looking at the choice they made, a path we still don't understand, a path we may one day be forced to follow. Part 3. Structures not made for us. opening ambient, faint thrumming of deep space reactors, punctuated by intermittent static, like faint whispers from a distant station. Talocan technology is not technological in any conventional sense. What remains of their architecture, still adrift in the depths of wormhole space, defies the design philosophies of even the most advanced civilizations in New Eden. From a distance, Talocan megastructures resemble derelict stations, drifting, dormant. But they are anything but abandoned. There's an elegance to them, a precision so perfect it feels alive. Seamless joints, angles that seem to rotate in place when viewed from different positions, surfaces that do not reflect light so much as fold it. These are not just ruins, they are puzzles waiting to be misread. The earliest record of Talocan ruins comes from the chronicle, In the Beginning, which recounts the early wormhole expeditions by explorers of the post-collapse Dark Age. One entry describes a vessel encountering a massive latticework structure near the edge of a collapsing wormhole. The structure was dormant, silent, but somehow aware of us, like walking into a cathedral where the god has gone missing, but the shape of its presence remains. This poetic description hints at something profound. The Talocan didn't merely use wormholes, they engineered with them. We know the Talocan were masters of spatial manipulation. The most widely accepted theory, cited in A Short History of the Sleeper Civilization by Professor Ilian Korvos, is that Talocan technology relied on a form of phase anchoring, locking parts of a structure into overlapping spatial dimensions to stabilize them against entropy. That's why their ruins are so geometrically pure, so impervious to age. They exist not entirely in this space. When you float beside a Talocan reactor node, you're seeing only a fraction of it, the part that chose to exist in your presence. Even the sleepers, who inherited or co-opted Talocan technology, never fully understood its mechanisms. The fact that sleepers built their enclaves around Talocan structures, rather than inside them, suggests a reverence or a fear, a recognition that these were not constructs to be repurposed. They were anchored truths, dangerous to interfere with. One capsuleer in the chronicle, Winds of the West, described the feeling of approaching a Talocan transfer array. It was like being studied, not watched, studied, as if the station itself was observing how we interpreted its purpose. This idea that Talocan structures may interact with observers is supported by multiple long-term scans conducted by Sisters of Eve exploratory missions. Their readings show variances in gravimetric flow depending on how many ships are present and their orientation. One internal memo speculated that Talocan reactors could tune space the way a musician tunes an instrument, realigning energy fields to maintain harmony within the wormhole. Of course, no official data has been released, but the patterns persist. Wherever Talocan structures are found, wormhole stability tends to increase, lifespans extend, traversal becomes less erratic. It's as if the ruins are still functioning, performing their role, whatever that may be. In ancient data fragments found in Anoikis, linguistic scholars believe they've isolated fragments of the Talocan lexicon. The recurring symbol, Sirishen, appears frequently on node junctions and energy emitters. Roughly translated, it means anchor point or the still center. From this, researchers theorize that Talocan constructs weren't built merely as dwellings or factories. They were part of a massive transportation and stabilization network. The Talocan may have used the wormhole network not just to travel, says Dr. Veren Sota of the Hedian University's Xenotechnic department, but to exist within it. to distribute themselves across time and space, maintaining their civilization through coordinated points of reality. When the Eve Gate collapsed, it may not have destroyed them. It may have stranded fragments of them everywhere. In this view, Talocan ruins are not failures of an extinct empire. They are windows left ajar, the resonance of a civilization that refused to exist linearly. But not everyone agrees. In Amarian heretical circles, known to scholars as the cult of the Nine Suns, Talocan structures are interpreted as divine architecture. Some believe they were created by the original caretakers of the Eve Gate, precursors to the sleepers, watchers of the divine bridge. These sects often refer to the ruins as the quiet tongue, a silent message encoded in spatial form, left behind for those with the wisdom to listen. They are not ruins, says an anonymous cult member in the archived Rogue Beliefs of Amar Volume 2. They are sentences, and every time a ship passes near them, they speak. Others are less spiritual, but no less obsessive. Galantean fringe theorists, particularly from the so-called Stargazers Enclave, believe the Talocan ascended into a higher dimensional realm. To them, the ruins are only partial representations, like the shadow of a four-dimensional object cast into our three-dimensional space. The rest of the structure is still there, but invisible, inaccessible. That's why they appear incomplete, argues one essay in meta-spatial topologies of the Anoikis field. Not because they're broken, because we're looking at the wrong fraction of the equation. Whatever the truth, one thing is clear. Talocan design is not made for us. It is not meant to be understood. Every attempt to study, replicate, or integrate it has ended in ambiguity or disaster. And yet, we keep trying. Because in those drifting monuments, locked in the strange half-light of wormhole space, we see something ancient, not just lost, but deliberately hidden. A civilization that understood space and time not as obstacles, but as materials. And every so often, the ruins stir, not with power, not with light, but with suggestion, as if waiting for something, or someone. Part 4. The echo of those who engineered the void. What do we leave behind when we disappear? For the Talocan, the answer may be everything and nothing. A civilization that never truly vanished, only phased beyond reach. In this segment, we explore how the shadow of the Talocan shaped the philosophies, cults, and fringe sciences that emerged in their wake. And we examine the growing belief that they may not be as gone as we think. The legacy of architecture. Wherever Talocan ruins are found, they exert influence, not just gravitationally, but ideologically. Sisters of Eve exploratory theology teaches that Talocan technology was not merely mechanical, it was spiritual engineering. Structures like the transfer control tower and phase stabilization array are believed to reflect a unifying principle: the balance of place, person, and passage. That is, space as sanctuary, identity as fluid, and motion as purpose. This belief has quietly threaded its way into capsuleer cultures. Some wormhole core refer to Talocan sites as sleeping cities, not dead, just waiting. Others believe they're dreaming, and that any intrusion is a form of psychic trespass. Blacksite Article 17-D, codename Polaris Rift, declassified from DED Red Archive, 29th of August, Y, C121, recovered from an abandoned research cruiser near J133119. Entry fragment: we were running interference scans on a decayed Talocan enclave node. What we got back wasn't EM reflection. It was a recursive question. Every signal we sent came back rewritten, altered slightly, as if it was trying to learn our language. On day 6, Dr. Vez ordered silence. On day 7, the array turned itself off. We didn't deactivate it. It rejected us, like a door that decided we no longer belonged on the threshold. Cults, movements, and ghost codes. In the far edges of wormhole space, where scanners falter and navigation becomes intuition, capsuleers have reported strange, repeating sensor anomalies near Talocan structures. Short bursts of mathematically perfect sequences, too ordered to be noise. A rogue Matari splinter group known as the Echo Kin believes these sequences are ghost codes, encrypted fragments of Talocan consciousnesses, imprinted into the geometry of their ruins. They argue that Talocan scientists uploaded parts of themselves into their own architecture, becoming eternal observers in an interdimensional limbo. Galantean philosophers at Hedion 4 scoff at the idea, but even they admit there are signals out there no one can fully explain. Whatever the truth, the fascination grows. The Talocan are no longer just a lost people. They are becoming a kind of cosmic mirror, showing us what we might become or what we fear we already are. Wanderers lost in time, building too much, too quickly, without knowing why. Blacksite report, Dexel 12, the drifter reaction hypothesis. Intercepted from unidentified drifter signal relay, forwarded through Concord echelon, marked not for civilian dissemination. Drifters avoid Talocan phase arrays. When forced near them, they exhibit agitation behavior, random power fluctuations, erratic telemetry drift, subnode scrubbing. They act like damaged programs being forced into contact with an incompatible OS. Working theory. Drifters contain derived code incompatible with Talocan architecture, or they remember it. Either way, these structures scare them. New faiths, old warnings. In the Kaldari state, a minor religious revival has emerged, calling itself the Church of Returning Angles. They teach that the Talocan understood time not as a line but a spiral, and that their disappearance was not an extinction, but a migration across temporal layers. The faithful claim that Talocan return moments are coming, when echoes of their existence will reassert themselves in our timeline. This doctrine has gained traction particularly among wormhole dwellers, some of whom have started building temples around ruin sites. SOE operatives have quietly begun documenting these gatherings, wary of their increasingly erratic behavior. Blacksite Field Journal 11C, False Awakening. Recovered from a dead capsuleer on board the derelict Astro No Trace, orbiting J225949. Final entry. The Talocan weren't just scientists, they were cartographers of the invisible. What they mapped wasn't space, but experience, moment by moment, across generations. I spent 3 weeks orbiting the node. It started reflecting my thoughts, not responding, reflecting. I could see my intentions projected as static patterns in the cloud. That's not a ruin, it's a dialogue trap. Dialogue trap. It's a phrase that surfaced multiple times in off-grid capsuleer logs, a theory that Talocan ruins are not just places, but questions. Places that hold up a mirror to your presence and ask, why are you here? For those who return unchanged, perhaps the ruins remain silent, but for the few who listen, who resonate with the hidden geometry, something awakens. Across every empire, ruin, and wormhole constellation, one truth repeats. The Talocan left behind more questions than answers. Their technology functions without known power sources. Their architecture resists gravity as if it were merely optional. Their language, if that's even what it is, refuses to be understood. It's like trying to read a dream before you've woken up. And yet, despite their silence, or perhaps because of it, the Talocan have shaped the course of modern exploration more than most living nations. Their ruins have changed minds, rewritten doctrines, and infected even the most rigid sciences with a quiet sense of awe. The Sisters of Eve interpret their legacy as a kind of cosmic scripture. Kaldari covert divisions see tactical potential. Amar theologians whisper that the Talocan may have transcended in ways disturbingly close to prophecy. And for capsuleers, the Talocan represents something hauntingly familiar, a civilization that sought meaning beyond maps, beyond mortality. Were they conquerors, scientists, monks, or were they us, simply further down the same spiral? Some believe the Talocan didn't fall. They left, voluntarily, methodically, and utterly. Their structures may not be decayed remains, but cast-off shells, chrysalis husks abandoned after a great migration, not across space, but through it. If that's true, then we are not archaeologists. We are intruders in a machine still in motion. Theories abound. A few researchers suggest the Talocan didn't just traverse wormholes, they built them, not as shortcuts, but as neural pathways, distributed synapses across a galactic scale consciousness, not merely travelers, but architects of living systems. This would explain their uncanny placements, their interaction with time and mass, their ability to evade extinction. It might even explain the strange reports from capsuleers, moments of clarity, dissonant dreams, sensations of being watched, not by something present, but something residual, encoded, imprinted, waiting. There is a final theory, spoken quietly, rarely published, but echoed in certain blacksite reports. It claims the Talocan are not gone, that their minds were distributed, fractally, intentionally, across Anoikis, that each wormhole, each static anomaly, is not a path, but a pulse. That wormhole space itself is a vessel, humming with a slumbering intelligence not dead, not alive, but persisting. If this is true, we're not exploring ruins, we're walking inside a dormant god. It's impossible to say if that theory is true, or even testable, but here's what is true. Every time we enter Anoikis, every time we land near a Talocan ruin and stare at its impossible scale from the cockpit of a ship that suddenly feels very small, we feel it. Not fear, not understanding, something in between. And maybe that's the point. Maybe the Talocan aren't trying to be found. Maybe they're trying to see who we become when we search for them. Some believe we're already part of their system, that the stories we tell, the fragments we uncover, even the wild theories we share among ourselves, are exactly what the Talocan intended. So keep looking, keep wondering, and if you have thoughts, wild, grounded, speculative, or poetic, about what the Talocan truly were, I'd like to hear them. Perhaps your insight is another piece of the puzzle. After all, in the dark, every voice becomes a kind of light. Join us next time as we dig deeper into the ancient strata of New Eden's past, before the rise of the Amar, Galente, Kaldari, and Minmata. We'll begin our hunt for the Forgotten Fifth, a shadow civilization buried beneath lost records, fragmented myths, and silenced by design. Some say it was destroyed before the empires were born. Others claim it still lingers, waiting to be remembered. You've been listening to Stories from New Eden. where the past isn't dead, only buried. If you enjoyed this journey through lost empires, fractured truths, and the shadows of the cluster, be sure to follow and share the podcast. Every transmission helps others find their way through the dark. New episodes drop every week, uncovering deeper layers of Eve's hidden history. From erased blacksite logs to the forbidden lore that empires try to silence. Until next time, fly safe, keep your senses sharp, and remember, in New Eden, something is always watching.